everybody. This is What's in the Box, and we're doing another AuthorCon, Texas AuthorCon 2 interview. This time we have PC3. Is that how you like to be called, or should we just say
Yeah,
Patrick Harrison the third? Should we be very formal? Do I need to be super formal?
no, as Mike Innebar often tells me, my name is too pretentious. Patrick C. Harrison III. So let's just go with PC3. It's a lot easier.
All right, that's very cool. So we're going to start off the very first question we're asking everyone. Jason versus Michael, and I don't mean in a fight. I mean, who do you prefer?
Jason versus Michael. Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers. I would take Michael Myers for
All
sure, but I
right.
would take Freddy over both of them.
Okay, there you go. Maybe I need to make it a three-part question to see.
I mean, Freddy's definitely my favorite. Well, Art the Clown has kind of emerged
Oh,
as my
isn't
favorite
that?
slasher now, but
Yeah.
as far as the old cool slashers, I'm a Freddy Krueger guy for sure.
Yeah, I really love one and three, and I tolerate four and five, and they get progressively worse as they continue. But
Yeah,
Freddy, the
I like
original
the
Nightmare,
silliness of them, which
oh,
is what you don't have from those early
that is true.
Jason and Michael ones.
When you get into five and you've got the pizza, and
Mhm.
yeah, I do like the special effects and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
especially dug it when I was younger. But when I'm
absolutely.
watching it though, I think one and three though are two of the finest slasher slash horror movies, period.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
Jason
That
consistently is
first
the
one
guy.
was fucking insane.
The
Like
first one is
nobody had seen one like that
Yeah, no, the first
before.
one's a masterpiece. And the first one
Yeah.
scarred me for life because I saw it at a very young age. It was
Oh
the
yeah.
second horror movie I saw by myself in a house after my parents had left. And I was turned on TMC, and there it is.
Oh
And by the time they got home, I had every light on in the house. And I
yeah.
was like, you don't understand.
I bet.
There's a guy, he's coming to kill everybody kind of thing,
I
I
bet.
was That's probably what put me on this road, for what I
Yeah,
do.
you never know.
Yeah.
I remember seeing I saw one in theaters. It was the first horror movie I ever saw in theaters because my parents didn't like horror movies, but it was the which one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets was 3D? I don't remember which one that was. It went to theaters 3D. It was either five or six, I think.
Yeah.
But I
It's
remember
gotta be
going to
five.
that.
Yeah.
I remember going to that, and I was probably 11 or 12, and that it freaked me out. I remember that.
Yeah, it's funny because the first one, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but boy, it opened the door, and I dove in head first. My dad hated horror.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was tolerant of it, but didn't watch it. But they
Mm-hmm.
gave me a green light to just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Watch what you want, do what you're going to do. My dad was very, very open to, or he wasn't about stopping you from watching a movie. I mean,
Yeah.
he took me to terrible movies at a very young age. The movie that probably scarred me the most was Excalibur. He took me to that when I was 5.
Oh,
And
really?
when Merlin gets frozen with the
Yeah.
dragon's breath, boy, that I had nightmares
Well,
for a long time after that.
I remember watching Willow when I was young, and some of the scenes from Willow, like there's
Yeah, it's
that big
intense.
two-headed snake monster thing,
Yeah,
freak you out when you're a little kid.
yeah, that's what. But I'm glad I saw those things because it put me on
Mm.
the right road. So the second question we're going to ask is we're just seeing which side of the fence you are on vampires and werewolves.
Oh man, um, I tend to want to say werewolves, but it kind of depends on what kind of vampires we're talking about.
Right.
Like if you look at the 28 Days Later vampires, those are some badass fucking vampires. I could hang out with them all day. Or if we're talking about like literary vampires, like Daniel Volpe's vampires from shit. What's the name of that book that just came
I would know it too. The rock one,
out?
with the band.
Yeah, fucking hell, it's Black Hearts and something. Anyway, the vampires that they're not the sparkly vampires. They're fucking sexy. They fuck things and then eat them, and that's the kind of fun vampires are. I'm not a fan of Twilight. I enjoyed Interview with the Vampire from Anne Rice, but past that, not a real fan of her.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
With all the romance involved with a lot of the vampires.
I'm a big fan of the Blade 2 and the Stain kind of vampires, the ones
Oh,
that
I hadn't thought about.
mutated
Yeah,
but
the
I'm
Blade
always
movies. Those are some underrated movies too.
oh
Those are
yeah.
some good fucking movies.
Yeah, and I was able to trick my wife into seeing them because they're a comic book movie. Oh no, they're a comic book
Mm-hmm.
movie. But that first one was a little more intense than I thought it was going to be. And the two is, of course, Del Toro's doing it, so two is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm Team Werewolf 90% of the time.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would say definitely when it comes to the universal monsters, I'm a werewolf guy.
yeah,
I like Dracula, Bela Lugosi, but the Wolfman, that was a great movie, and that's probably my first introduction to werewolves was Silver Bullet,
yeah,
and that was the first movie that had me so fucking scared. I remember hiding behind the couch. My parents were watching it, which is strange because they didn't like horror movies, but I was hiding behind the couch, like peeking around at the TV screen as the werewolf in Silver Bullet is like walking along somebody's porch, and I remember being so scared.
hmm
Uh,
yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
what's funny is I think every parent has a movie like that because my dad hated horror, but he loved The Thing. And he watched
mm,
that all the time. And I remember doing the same thing, being behind the couch at a very young age, peeking through the crack or the cushion and being terrified by what's going on in that movie. But he
that's
would
a good one too.
never, yeah, they would never, he was anti horror. I think the only vampire I dug that isn't like a mutation vampire is I love Fright Night. I think that's a great movie. I love
See, it's been so long since I've seen the original one. I watched the remake with Colin Farrell,
I've
and
never seen the remake, so I don't know about that one.
yeah, I was not impressed at all with the remake. But I would need to go back and revisit the original. I remember liking it years ago,
Yeah.
but
I think
also it might be my likeness of it might be attached to that poster because the poster is so
Yeah, the
badass.
poster's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you see that, you know exactly what's going on, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes you back to that time. But
Mm-hmm.
my other thing about werewolves that I love so much is that I'm a big you know practical effects guy, and I
Mm-hmm.
love how much work they had to put into making a werewolf become
Yeah.
believable in the old days.
And
Now with the CGI, it's still cool,
no,
but it's
no,
so
I
much
hate it when they
easier.
do it with CGI though, because look at American Werewolf in London,
Oh
how
yeah, no.
that changing scene, and even the Howling,
Hmm.
they did an amazing job in that one too. They could do even better now, but I think it's cheaper and easier to go with the CGI effects now, and
It's
they look
definitely easier.
fine.
Yeah.
But there's something more visceral about doing it with practical effects. It just is better for horror with practical effects.
And so, talking about movies that we've already kind of jumped into, what was your favorite scary movie as a kid? And is it the same now that you're an adult, or do you have a new scary movie that kind of took its place?
My favorite horror movie. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's the same as scary movie. My favorite horror movie is the same. It would be Return of the Living Dead.
Yep.
I watched that. I'm trying to think what age I was. I was probably 11 or 12, and I think my cousin had it on VHS. And I remember watching that, and of course, the gore, the practical effects are great in that one. But then you have Trash showing off her tits, getting all naked. It's the first time I'd seen that as a
Yeah.
kid, and
It
so
has
you get,
everything that you need.
I have the horror, I have the comedy, and I have a nude woman here in front of me, and I'm like, holy shit, this is heaven.
The
And
holy grail
that,
of horror.
yeah, that's legitimately part of the reason I fell in love with horror, no doubt, was watching that movie, and that's still my favorite today. Now, as far as movies that scare me, like I said, that probably the first movie that truly scared me was Silver Bullet. But now I don't know if you've seen the Autopsy of Jane Doe.
No, but I have heard
That,
good things.
oh my gosh, it is a frightening movie for sure. It's probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I think one of the things so scary about it is it feels, in a lot of horror movies, you'll have the main characters that all these wild things are happening, and they refuse to believe it's happening. Even though it's so obvious it's happening. There's like this character development where they're like, "Oh, that would never happen," and then they slowly start to accept it, and then like, "Holy shit, this bad stuff is happening. We need to do something about it." When in the Autopsy of Jane Doe, as soon as bad stuff starts happening, they don't piddle around with non-belief. They're like that. They respond the way real people would respond. Something crazy happens, and they're like, "Fuck, we got to get out of here." And that was like the scariest moment for me.
Yeah.
Is that when you see that they're treating it like how real people would treat it? It made it so much better in that sense. I think.
I had that sensation with The Strangers the first time I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting in a
Yeah, that
theater
was a
and it
good one
wasn't
too.
a full house. It was only like, maybe 10 of us in there, and I'm just being a
Yeah.
buddy and then the other people. But by the end of that movie, I was on the edge of my seat because you just slowly creeping because it's so tense and it just builds and
Mm-hmm.
builds and you can see yourself in those characters. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. There's really not. I mean, because even Art the Clown, the Terrifier is supposed to be scary, but
Yeah.
I'm more just amused by the effects, and I love
Yeah. I wouldn't call
character.
that one. I don't know if that one scares me at all. It's definitely an entertaining watch, and I love the
Yeah.
gore, and I love Art's character because he's just off the wall insane. But I definitely wouldn't call it a scary movie.
I always find now the stuff that scares me the most is when it can hit you on that family level. If
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's a lot of times I'll be watching something that's not
Yeah.
horror at all, but it'll be, whatever crime show or whatever. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Well, that's where like Pet Cemetery comes in. It's like,
yeah,
ooh, that's
the
a rough.
original, the
It's
original one's got some good stuff
the
too.
original one's real good, and then the book. I don't know if you've read the
Mm-hmm.
book. Is a terrifying one.
Yeah. In
But
fact, I think it might be my favorite King book. It might be his best, in my opinion.
it's
I don't know.
definitely the scariest.
Yeah,
Right
oh
there.
man, the ant, the whole stuff with the ant and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that freaked me out. And I read that at an early age. That's the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I'm mid to late 40s now. So some of this stuff I read when I was 10, 11, 12, and I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
I am like, oh, I don't really like it, or I did like it, but I'm like, I'm a different
Yeah.
person. I need to go back and revisit it because I shit on
You
King
do
a
see
lot.
it differently when you're old. You see,
Yeah.
especially like stuff like Pet Cemetery where there's children involved. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I that would be horrifying.
Mm.
To me, this one of the books that hit me the hardest was The Road because I read it when my son
Yeah.
was the same age as that character, and I thought the whole time I'm reading it, I see myself and my son in this situation, and when I got to the end of that book, I was broken. I
Oh
thought,
my
man,
God.
this is the best book I've read in a long time.
Yeah. That one won the Pulitzer too.
You
Yeah.
know what?
That
I
was
think
a
it
rough.
did. I think it does have a tag on it saying it won something. I'm terrible at paying attention to anything, but
Mm.
yeah, it's one of those things. And a lot of people don't consider it horror, but I think it's one of the truly scariest books I've read, and
Yeah.
it's because I was able to.
Whether it's a horror genre or not, it's definitely a horrifying book. That's
Yeah.
undeniable.
Okay, let's see. What is your go-to recommendation for new readers for horror?
For new
Or if you
readers,
want to do something else, like if somebody new is like, I want to get into horror, what's a book I should try? And then also, what is your favorite horror novel? And we can just mix them together if you want to, and they may be the same book. I don't know.
well, let's see. They might be the same book, or I would say in overall horror, not talking like any specific subgenre. It's probably cliche, but probably my favorite is it, just because there's so much in there. So many he uses so many aspects of horror in one large piece. But that probably wouldn't be the one I would initially recommend to anyone, just because it's such a massive volume to tackle. If someone's just now coming into horror, I might go with something a little more tame, maybe something like Lightning by Dean Koontz or Phantoms by Dean Koontz would be a
Yeah,
good
that would be a good one. Although I wonder
or
if maybe one of these shorter ones from the 70s wouldn't be a terrible.
yeah,
But like I
or
said, this is your suggestion, so I don't want to come in here and
maybe
it's
this might be my favorite over it. Ghost Story by Peter Straub is right up there, and it's also a very literary piece in my opinion. And I think that would be a good one to start with. But if you want to go even a little more modern, The Fisherman by John Langan is a
oh yeah.
brilliant book.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet, so I'll have to put it on my stack.
Yeah, it's one of the best I've read in the last several years, and it won the Bram Stoker for the year it came out. And it is another one that is a very you appreciate the prose and the storytelling in it, not just the horror aspect of it. It's a beautifully written book, a beautiful story, but also terrifying. So that would probably be my pick, I guess.
Sweet. Let's see. Okay, and so I mean, almost most of the people at the Texas Author Con will be horror writers, but we do have other genres and stuff there. So the fifth question is, what genre do you prefer to write in? And then if you want to jump into subgenres, or if you want to, give us a couple different genres that you're into, or any of that kind of stuff.
You said writing?
Yeah. What do you like to write?
I primarily write horror, although I have written in fact, the first piece I ever got published was literary fiction, just a story about an old man fishing and thinking about his deceased wife. But I mainly write horror and mainly extreme horror. But I'm branching out, moving forward into, I hate the word mainstream, but more of, I guess, a mainstream horror. What I'm working on, the novel I'm working on now is going to be more of a mainstream horror. But I'm also probably going to be writing some shorter works in the extreme horror splatterpunk genre because that's what people know me for and want from me currently. So I'm trying to put out some shorter works that seem to be what people like in the extreme horror and splatterpunk genre. But I'm also working on that a massive novel that's going to be a little more mainstream. Might get a little more graphic as it goes along. But I've written in a lot of genres. I've written sci-fi, I've written fantasy, I've written literary fiction.
Your splatter westerns are, I mean, they're westerns. So
written western. Hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, it is a western, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing when and we get into the subgenres, and I hate subgenres when it comes to horror because to me, I'm a fan of horror, and I don't really care how it's packaged or how it comes. And I think you could make an argument that Pet Sematary could be an extreme horror novel. It's got some elements in there. Yeah. I think you could pull a lot of different
does people. Too. There's a couple of scenes in it where you're like, whoa.
And so when I say I'm an extreme horror writer, I don't really mean I'm writing gross out stuff. I'm just I like to say it because some people get upset if you don't warn them. And that's my warning. There's going to be violence. There may be sex. There's going to be the F word. There's stuff in there that would get an R rating. So
I used to put warnings in my descriptions on the books. I don't anymore because I've discovered that I really like those 1-star reviews when people are upset about what they just read.
And that's the truth. I always say, you know what the warning is? The warning is that it's a horror novel. That's your warning.
Yeah.
So if you stumbled into
Prepare to be offended.
Yes. Right. If the lady on the cover holding the axe didn't tell you something was going to happen, there's nothing I can do, to make you happy. I'm not going to list everything that might offend because I'm going to miss that one person who's going to get offended by something else. So,
you're right.
I'm just like, man, I don't want it. When I go into a book, I want to be horrified, nothing better than reading something and then going like, holy shit, what?
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
You know what? When I don't think it was the first extreme horror novel I read, but I went into Header by Ed Lee, not knowing what Header meant. So that's the way to go into it. Because if you already know what header means, it kind of ruins it for you. But if you go in reading it blind and you get to where it shows you what a header is, you're like, holy fuck.
I know, right? It's shocking. And then, I mean, that's how I was with Layman. When I read my first Layman, I was like, oh, I just didn't realize that there was this. This was it clicked immediately. And I thought, okay. So when I worked on my first one, when I finally got Shadow Within done, I was like, it's a love letter to Layman. He told me it's the blueprint. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love that. But I do love to hear that all the genres, and that's kind of what I do too. I'm like, I find horror in everything, right? So to me, everything is horror, and it just happens to be whatever it is we're talking about. So I could easily do a romance or a Western or, sci-fi or whatever. There's always going to be elements of horror in it because that's kind of where I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that we can write horror in such a huge umbrella and not have to be contained to, I write mermaid fiction or whatever it is that a lot of some of these genres kind of shoehorn you into. I do love that you can write a story about a matchmaker or that kind of idea with your 100% match, Grandpappy, and then you got the Savage. I've got Savage Breed right here.
Oh, nice.
I mean, all of those are stories that are taking place in completely crazy universes, totally different vibes, different feelings. I mean, 100% match I haven't read yet, so I don't know how close it is to some of the others.
Oh, you haven't read that one yet?
No, I have not got
it's written in a similar fashion to Grandpappy, but I've actually had readers reach out to me because they've read Grandpappy and 100% Match. Those are my two best sellers, and they're both written in a similar fashion, not really similar storylines, but they're both first person present tense is how I wrote them, and I wrote them in a like a black comedy fashion. And then they've gone on to some of my other books, which are a lot more bleak, a lot less humor in them. Mm-hmm. They're like, man, you just went completely different for this book. And I'm like, no, I went completely different when I got to Grandpappy 100% Match.
Right.
You never know how you're going to go, just however the story comes to you. But yeah, I definitely branch out and tell stories in different ways and different subgenres and stuff like that. I think that's part of the enjoyment of storytelling, I guess.
Yeah, and I love the fact that so many horror writers are able to do that. Mm-hmm. You'll go at this event, there's going to be so many choices for you, even if you're not 100% into horror. Like I said, there'll be other genres, but within each table, you're going to see a wide variety of stuff. You have collections of short stories. Like I said, you have the splatter Western. You've got these, like you said, they're dark and funny, which Grandpappy 100% Match. But you also have, you have some of the stuff you did with Cerebus, and so they all have a different kind of vibe, and so there's something that everybody can kind of jump into and check out. I think everybody's going to find something really cool that they like at all these tables.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now, are you going to have anything done before this event? You said you're going to work on some shorter stuff, and you've got that one.
Yeah, novel. I've got a couple of. So here's the size of 100% Match, right?
I love that too. I love that you did that.
Chapbook size, yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's kind of spawning from this, because it's done so well, I'm going to start, and I haven't really told anybody this, so this is kind of breaking news, kind of. But I'm going to start a little series of books. They're going to be called Splat Life.
Oh, very cool.
And they're going to be short stories that are like 8 to 15,000 words, and they're going to be printed in this size, and it's going to start with like number 1. They're going to be standalone, but it's going to be like a series of books.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, kind of like a choose your own adventure. Like they always had a number, but each book was its own thing.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I'm hoping to have the next one out here in the next 10 days or so. The first one's going to come out.
Very cool.
It's called The Sludge Tab, and it's not funny at all. It's a very bleak, black, horrible story, but it's going to be the first one of the Splat Life series. And I'm hoping to put one out maybe every 2 months or so, hopefully, for however long they sell good.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the cool thing too, is I love that, you have the option of always just going ebook if you want to with some of these things, but I love when you put it in that format. I love the size and I love how it looks.
Yeah. I had no idea this would actually work.
Yeah.
I say it in the beginning of the book that this was originally meant to be in an anthology. Macabre Ladies Publishing invited me to an anthology, and I wrote 100% Match for it. Well, then that anthology fell through, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this story? It's over 12,000 words. No other anthology is going to want a 12,000 word story.
Right.
So I was like, well, fuck it. I'll just, without any warning to anybody, I just said, okay, well, I'll just upload it to Amazon and see what happens. And all of a sudden it takes off, and, it's my best-selling book within a month.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. Of course, we all love to hear those success stories, because when you take a chance, it could really blow up and do the opposite. And then what does that do? That discourages you, and you don't want to do the splat line you're talking about. But now we're going to get an even better, an even wider opportunity of your library to grow and stuff. It's kind of what I did with I call them the godless shorts. They're about 10,000, give or take, and they're short. And I just wanted to have some little things that I could have at cons to hand out, like, oh, check me out for $5, or, even online, sometimes people just want to read it. Like you said, people are into the smaller stuff.
For whatever reason, in the extreme horror splatterpunk genre, it seems to be, like 50,000 or less words.
Yeah.
You don't see any huge doorstops of extreme horror, at least if there are any out there. I don't know what they are. Playground by Aaron Beauregard, I think, is about 80,000 words.
Yeah, my first one, Shadow Within, is just under 60. And I thought that was like massive. I'm like, this is huge. And now my sweet spot is 40 to 50 if I'm going to do a book.
That seems to be what people are into for that subgenre for whatever reason.
Well, I wonder if it's because it is extreme. It can get pretty testy. And sometimes you need to keep
it's
that
hard to
level
keep up.
up.
Yeah, that's exactly it, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're like, I need a palate cleanser. Let me read this 10,000, and I'll go to read something else, and then I'll come back and we're gonna jump into another one. It's kind of what I was doing. That was the idea with the ones I was doing on Godless. I'm excited to see the series you're gonna do coming out, especially in that. I love that format. That smaller size.
It's gonna look really cool. I hope it does well because the idea in my head, is very badass, and I see it being accepted by the audience very well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Very cool. So last question. Other than going to Texas AuthorCon, where can we find all your stuff?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Everything is on there under Patrick C. Harrison III. I also have a.
I was just saying, are you a fan of KU? Do you use
Kindle? All my books are on Kindle Unlimited. Matter of fact, I didn't have them on Kindle Unlimited, and whenever I released this, I talked to Duncan Ralston, who wrote Womb, and I noticed it was on Kindle Unlimited, and I went to him. And the reason I hadn't had my books on Kindle Unlimited previously was because you get less money from Kindle Unlimited than you do from buying books. As far as if somebody reads every page of your book versus buying the book, you get less money, right? But I saw that his book Womb was on Kindle Unlimited, so I went to him and I said, do you feel like being on KU has helped your book? And he said, oh, I get more money off KU than anything else. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I signed up, and I credit Duncan for telling me that, and as one of the reasons that book blew up, because it's been a success ever since I changed it to that. But now all my books are on KU. So if anybody has Kindle Unlimited, they can read my books all day long.
Yep, so you can give it a shot, check it out, and you can still buy them if you want to, and do both. And
this is a great size to have on your bookshelf, by the way.
Yeah, and then
it's only $7.99. So.
Do you sell? Do you do signed copies from?
I do have some books on my Etsy page, which is PC3 Books on Etsy.
I'll make sure all the links are in below us, so you guys can click and go check out his stuff. So
okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so Etsy. What about Etsy? Is that a fun way of doing it? Do you think that's a good?
Yeah, I've got over 100 sales on Etsy, but I don't just sell my stuff. I sell like if I have some extra horror paperbacks laying around, I'll throw them on there. Just stuff I want to get rid of or think they might bring a buck or two, I'll throw on Etsy. But I've done fairly well on there. I want to open up a site of my own, a store where people can get not only paperbacks that are signed, but also ebooks and swag and that sort of thing. And that's in the works. I'm just having to. My current website is through WordPress, and it's not as easy to make a store out of WordPress as it is like Shopify and some of these other things.
For sure. I used Wix, and I was having some trouble. So
I'm having to kind of figure out how that's going to work. But eventually I plan to have an online store like some of these other guys are doing. And then I got a Substack where I keep everybody up to date on my news, and that's PC3horror.substack if anybody wants to check that out.
That's the one where you talk about the movies too, right? Because I do get that, and I enjoy it because you will talk about some very obscure horror movies, but you also talk about some classics that everybody should watch and stuff. And it's kind of cool to have that pop up in your timeline, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that movie, or I've wanted to see that movie, and then going from all that. So I would 100% recommend your Substack because I do enjoy it, and it's not what none of them really are. They don't like fill up your your inbox. It's not like you guys are
No,
sending out
and it's
37
free.
a day. Yeah.
It's not one of those you have to pay money to subscribe to. I've kind of slowed down on those posts on that one right now just because I've been so busy with other stuff. But that is my goal, to 3 or 4 posts a week, post about some wild, obscure, like I
Yeah.
said, like an exploitation grindhouse horror on there. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and it comes through, and that's why I enjoy that Substack. Sometimes you'll get on there and you'll be like, "Oh, this guy's just going through the motions," but when you can see somebody that's actually writing about things that they're passionate about on top of whatever it is they're telling you, because I mean, in a way, it's keeping you out there. It's your advertising for you and your books and stuff, but it also lets us see a little bit of behind the curtains and get to know you a little bit in the things you like and the way you tell us how you enjoy these things. So I've really enjoyed your Substack.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, that is it. I just want to say thanks for coming on here, and we will see you at Texas AuthorCon.
All right, Eric, I'll see you there. And anybody wants to come by my table, please do so.
All right. See y'all later.